afternoon. Welcome to the Teachers Retirement Board for September 15th, 2022. I will start by calling the roll. Brian Burby.
Present, representing Mayor Eric Adams.
Thomas Brown.
Here.
Sorry.
Russell Buckley.
Representing Panel for Education Policy Chair, Dr. Angela Green, and Interim CFO, Department of Education, Benjamin Schambacher.
Allison Hirsch.
Present, representing Controller Brett.
David Kazansky.
Present.
Deborah Penny.
Present.
We have a quorum. So the next item on our agenda is an update on TRS operations, and Kavita Kanwar is going to provide us with that update.
Good afternoon, all. Nearly 1,700 members retired over the summer with a retirement date between July and August. 97% of these members are receiving advance payments of finalized retirement benefits as of September's payroll. In July, TRS conducted an email campaign to members who need to receive a required minimum distribution or RMD from their TD account. About 15,000 members who had not yet filed an RMD election received this reminder email. Members who do not file an election will receive a distribution at year end. Over the summer, TRS's member education team conducted 42 educational programs virtually, serving over 1,800 members. And finally, earlier in September, TRS introduced a new look for the secure section of our website. Members who log in will and find all same features, but with a cleaner page design and easier navigation. Thank you.
Thank you, Kavita. Next on the agenda is an update from the actuary.
Thank you. I'm Mark Skevich from the Office of the Actuary. A couple quick updates. I will be taking my oath of office on September 23rd. So then I'll become the official Deputy Chief Actuary. Mike Samet, still the interim Chief Actuary. We are pleased to notify the board that we've completed the June 30th, 2020 final actuarial evaluation that is available on our website. And the contribution is the same as what you approved previously that Mike presented.
Thank you. Now we're going through this quick. All right.
Good.
All right, next is the Executive Director's Report. And the first item on the Executive Director's Report is the matter of the next meeting. And it has been suggested that the next regular meeting of the Teachers Retirement Board be held on the fourth Monday of the month, October 20th, 2022. So we should mark our calendars. Second is the resolution on the authorization to the Controller of the City of New York to invest certain QPP funds.
Please waive the reading.
Next is, yes,
Take a vote?
oh, yes, I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll take a vote.
You do
on
take a
future.
vote.
Okay. So do I hear a motion for the authorization to the controller on the City of New York to invest certain QPP funds?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, motion carries.
Next is authorization to the Controller of the City of New York to invest certain tax-deferred annuity funds.
Again, please waive the reading.
Okay, so do I have a motion for the authorization to the controller of the City of New York to invest certain tax-deferred annuity funds? Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Buckley. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries.
On
Next,
behalf of the controller, I'd like to thank you all for your continued trust.
great. Next is the ratification of the appointment of the Chief Actuary. Whereas pursuant to New York City Administrative Code, Section 13-509, the Board of Trustees of the Teachers Retirement System of the City of New York, TRS, is required to appoint a chief actuary to the system and the board in an earlier resolution. Appointed Marek, all right, I'm going to try this. Tiskevich. Okay.
So easy.
I'll spell it correctly for the record, don't worry.
Chief Actuary, Secretary.
Wait, hold on.
I think
What'd you say?
Just
Yeah?
spell it.
I'll spell it correctly. I'll spell it correctly on the record. Don't worry about it. It'll be spelled correctly.
Judith, you had to spell
No,
it?
she said she'll spell it correctly.
Oh, all right. As chief actuary, subject to successful negotiation of salary and completion of other city hiring processes, therefore be it resolved, the board hereby ratifies and confirms Mr. Tiskovich, Mr. Tiskovich, appointment as he has completed the steps necessary for his appointment.
Thank you, Patricia. So if everyone remembers, in January, Sherry Chan gave her notice that she'd be stepping down as the chief actuary of the city of New York. At that time, the 5 pension funds started their search. During that time, we are so honored that Mike Samet agreed to step in and be the interim chief actuary, and we cannot thank you enough for your services. Mr. Samet will be retiring. What is your retirement date? Do you have a retirement date?
September 30. But I will be around for a period of time, helping Mark through the transition.
And again, the city of New York,
Thank you.
the TRS Pension Fund really thanks you for everything that you've done. And we are pleased to welcome Mark. As he said, he's going to be sworn into office on September 23rd. So we couldn't be happier to have you as our chief actuary. Having said all of that, do I have a motion to appoint the chief actuary?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any question, discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Welcome.
Next, resolutions of attendance at a conference. Resolved that the trustees of the Teachers Retirement Board hereby approve the attendance and participation of the executive director and/or her designees and any interested trustee at the National Conference on Public Employee Retirement Systems and CPERS 2022 Public Safety Conference from October 23rd through October 26th, 2022.
Thank you, Patricia. Do I hear a motion to approve the attendance at this conference?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Any discussion or questions about the conference? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstention? Motion carries.
Next on the agenda is the calendar. And first item on the calendar is the approval of the following minutes. The June 2nd, 2022 investment meeting minutes, the June 16th, 2022 board meeting minutes, the June 23rd, 2022 special investment meeting minutes, June 28th, 2022 special board meeting minutes, Carol, and then those are at the end of the minutes, sorry.
Thank you, Patricia. Do I hear a motion to approve the minutes of the June 2nd, 16th, 23rd, and 28th meetings?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any questions about the board minutes? Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Minutes are passed.
The next item is the calendar items themselves. You've all received an electronic version of those and I've had an opportunity to review them.
Please waive the reading of the calendars.
Thank you.
Do I hear a motion to approve the calendar?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. Do I have a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any questions about the calendar? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Calendar passes.
Now we are scheduled to hear from Ken Gartner, the first deputy budget director. Is he here? Oh, great. So I'm going to turn it over to Mr. Gartner.
Thank you. Hi, so I'm here to talk about the new.
Liz, could you hold on for 1 second? Liz, could you make
Absolutely.
the screen, Mr. Gartner, so we could all see him and make it louder? Thank you.
Oh, there I cut myself. Hi, first I want to just thank the board for giving us the opportunity to address you guys about our proposal and what's going on. So it came to our attention that while there's a variety quite frankly, of ways in which the pension payments are handled on FMS. That certainly for TRS and NYCers, the pension systems themselves go into FMS, put in the purchase order, and then process the payment vouchers monthly. And once we were aware of that, it sort of points out a control weakness. You shouldn't be processing payments to yourself. That's just inherently sort of not something that's consistent with good controls. So once we were aware of that, we looked at how we could do this. We decided that what made sense was to have OMB process the transactions for all 5 systems. But we were concerned that, we've been doing it this way for a while, and we were worried that there would be hiccups or a problem. And so we decided to take the smallest single employer system, which is Fire. And back in January, we switched to that system. So, under the current system here at TRS, right, the OA prepares the contribution memo, OMB sends the memo to TRS to inform them of the total amount and the monthly amounts, and then TRS sets up the purchase order and processes the monthly payments. Under the new, everything is the same, except OMB would set up the purchase order and process the monthly payments. And what we found, when we went to the system at Fire, was there were no problems. Everything's gone smoothly. Payments have been made. There were no FMS hiccups. So we wanted to go ahead and roll out, this change to the other 4 systems. We've actually implemented now at BRRS, but we knew that there was some misgivings on the part of the trustees, and we wanted to, give you guys time. And I've now will have gone to the 3 remaining systems and done this kind of presentation. I think it's very important, right, that I make clear that this change is purely ministerial in nature, and that this does not in any way impact the obligation of the city to pay, when to pay, or how much to pay. All of those things are controlled by statute, and the amount and calculations are done by the OA under the statutes. We'll continue making the same payments. We'll be sure to make sure that we're transparent, that we would send a communication to each of the systems, prior to and after we've made the payments. And so in addition to being able to check to see that the payments were made by looking in the system, you'll have some kind of email or correspondence from us saying, here's the amounts that we set up, here's the amount we paid. Each month we would send a communication to let them know that. So we just to finish out the background, right? We did this in January for Fire and BRRS. We did it in July. We have haven't experienced any problems. We sent correspondence to the systems other than Fire back in July saying, we wanted to switch to this new method. But like I said, we understood that from several of the systems that there was concerns, and we wanted to make sure we had the chance to address them, and that you had the chance to ask questions, and we could alleviate those concerns. I can share the screen for a second, and this will this just shows you. Oh, sorry. This will show you the sort of a flow chart of how the current system is and how the new system would work. Once again, the important part is that as to the amounts and the timing of payments, nothing is changing here. This is only about who makes entries into the FMS system. Ultimate payment, made after when the controller then actually vouchers or transfers the money to the systems. So I'll leave it up if you want a chance to look at it, but otherwise, I think I've covered most of it, and I'd be happy to answer your questions.
Ken, thank you for being here. Your comment about the controls, in some sense, that may take a while. In some sense, I think we feel we have an appropriate control since with the board's consent, we get the letter from the actuary that we're putting the information in and you see what's being put in. So you've got, more than one set of eye to have one entity do it and then just tell us that it's done. I don't believe that's a good control either. So I'm not sure that I kind of buy that, if you will.
It's the same as, with regard to, one entity putting it in, that is currently what happens. The difference here is that the obligor, right, the employer, the person making the payment is putting it in, and then the person, the entity receiving the money is checking. But whether the checking should be done, the board and the through the pension agencies, administrators should be checking because they have an obligation to make sure that the payments are made in accordance with the statutory obligations. But the determination of that is entirely statutory, and the city will in fact is obliged to pay on the schedule and in the amount that's prescribed by the OA. In terms of
Patricia,
go ahead.
No, it's Patricia Riley. So you said you just realized this, but this practice has been in place for over 20 years. So it's strange. And then I guess my other question is that, last year, I think I had a conversation with you, the legislature had not changed the AIR, but you entered an AR, you had us enter an AR that wasn't consistent with the legislation.
Okay.
For the 7%.
So I'll try to do both of those. So the first is, I wasn't aware that this was the process for, until very recently. I do know it had been in place for a while. I don't know how long, but it came to my awareness, and I was like, wow, that's a real control weakness. In terms of the second part, first of all, happened last year, happened under the old system, and we paid the amounts, the amounts that the law department told us were the lawfully required amounts, and that's what we'll do going forward, irrespective of any of these other issues. If the law department tells us that we're legally obliged to pay X, that's what we're going to pay. They're the statutory advisor to the board. There are attorneys as well. If there's a dispute, about the law department's interpretation of the statute, that could become a dispute that would have to be resolved in the courts. But for our determination, the city isn't going to pay an amount that we don't believe is lawful. And in terms of what we believe, we rely on the judgment of the law department to tell us what the statute dictates we do.
Was it lawful?
We did last year, and that's what we'll do going forward, whether or not we have this process.
Go ahead, Val.
Not to bring up kind of some, unfortunate circumstances, but that there was a point where the contribution calculation by the actuary was patently inconsistent with the statute. And I don't think the trustees are doing their job if that patently inaccurate contribution calculation just moves forward because somehow, some way, and I'm not clear how they could do that, the actuary said it was okay. There is a role of the board of trustees to confirm that the calculations are consistent with the statute.
So
that didn't happen once.
So we consider that to be a legal issue, which is best answered by the law department. If there was some area where I can't imagine this happening, where somehow the city didn't contribute what the law department said it was legally obliged to contribute, that would be a real problem and a real management problem on our part. But that's not what happened. And the way as I understand it, The law department looked at the statute, at the statutes and the law and said that this was the correct, that this was the amount we should pay. And that's the amount that was paid. It happened under the old system, I just want to point out. So this change has nothing to do with it. I think what would have to happen, and Marta can jump in if this is wrong, but my understanding is if that we would pay the amount that the law department advised you and us to put in, that amount will be paid. If there was a dispute, you guys would get, I guess, outside counsel, and then there would be that could be handled in court.
So,
If assuming
so it
that
just-
you couldn't be resolved. But that's irrespective of the system. I mean, the very instance you point out happened under this current system, which this has nothing to do with who controls or how much we pay. That's all controlled by statute. This is about who makes entries into the city's budget and financial system, right? And and that is, not really per se board matter. The issue is, you're right. The board has an obligation, to execute its fiduciary obligations with regard to making sure that the contributions that are made are correct. But that has nothing to do with this. And I think, unfortunately, people are conflating the two. One being really a ministerial act about who puts entries into the city's budget system, and we're not changing the way in which this dispute would play out if there was one in the future by doing this. The only thing we're doing is we're eliminating a control weakness, which I just think anybody who's familiar with the sort of the way the accountants and the best
So Ken,
practices
so-
look, you shouldn't be able to put a voucher in to pay yourself. That's all.
All right, so Ken, thank you. And Allison wants to speak, but just in regard to that, I think the big problem was when the board is disregarded and when you go to the law department. So the law department works for the board. And in that instance, the board made a determination that was legal of what the AIR was going to be. And then the law department felt otherwise. But we'll go on to what you're talking about. I think Allison wants to speak now.
It's sort of related, but also you keep saying that it's a breakdown and control function. And can you explain that to me?
Breakdown in
Because
control functions, it's not appropriate, right? As I mean, from the controller standpoint, I think this would be your accountancy point of view, that you shouldn't have a system where somebody is able to make a voucher and pay themselves. The entity TRS.
we're not paying ourselves, we don't, but it's like any other invoice, like if,
A voucher is a bill.
right, a voucher is a bill, we're not paying ourselves, we're making a voucher to OMB to pay us.
Yes.
Right, so you're putting in the system, right, the voucher to make payment for yourself. There's no other process in the system to look at it. Generally speaking, if the city is paying an entity and TRS is considered,
Getting rid of
right,
the
a
control
separate
function.
entity, right, that the
So I-
vendor doesn't put the entry into FMS. I don't know that we have systems where, and we shouldn't. I think that that where the vendor, I mean, in this case it's TRS, but the vendor puts in a transaction in the city's budget and accounting system to trigger a payment to itself, as opposed to, right, as opposed to an invoice going to a city entity and then the city putting those entries into the system so that.
But by that logic, then the invoice should go to a third party that would then send it to OMB to send it us. It shouldn't
What's
just
the third?
be
I'm sorry,
entirely OMB.
what's the
So
third
it
party?
just
I'm
seems like it's
sorry.
one entity instead
Well,
of the
hold on,
array of
guys.
OMB and
Wait.
then-
We have
Still in the
four
time.
people talking at once. We got four of you talking at once. Who's talking now?
So, yeah, so I'm talking, so that still doesn't make sense.
Deborah.
It seems, Deborah, so it seems like the way you're suggesting, one entity took control of it and there goes all of the checks and balances. So out of all the years that you've done it, there was one error. And again, that one error was when the board's wishes or the board's resolution was disregarded. So we'll just take that example out. But I think as you heard from TRS and from all of us, when it goes to the OA and then to OMB and to TRS. There's the checks and balances. There's the different entities working together as it's worked for so many years.
I'm all for people working together. This isn't about working together. There's no role for the OA in this. This is about who puts the FMS entry into the system. It's not about deciding the amount. It's not about your legal dispute from last year. This is really exclusively about putting entries in the system. And in terms of errors, you're right. Luckily, we haven't had a lot. The only one I know of is that Fire put in the wrong amount in the voucher, got overpaid for a single month, and then the following month we came back and worked with them and reduced it. But all prior, this was years ago. So the fact is, but when you talk about a control system, right? I don't know what you mean by a third party. This is sort of where I got confused. There's the city of New York has an obligation to pay the pension contribution, right? That no one else does for our share of the multi-employer plan, right? So we're simply saying that the city puts in the amounts. If we put in the wrong amount, whether it's OMB or any other part of the city, then clearly we'd be subject to some kind of you obviously review and then the make whole, and the board could the system could charge interest if we underpaid. That certainly sounds right, but the city is the entity that's obliged to pay, right? Under the statute, it's not the board paying itself, it's the city's required contribution. And, it makes sense for the city to put that in. It's not appropriate, in my opinion, for the board to put a voucher in to pay itself. I just think that's just inherently a control.
Okay, so Ken, I don't mean to stop you, but let me ask the rest of the board if they would like to speak about it. So you've heard, so I'm opposed to it. I think it belongs the way it was. It's always worked, and I can't see any reason for this.
How long has we've been doing it the way we've been doing it up until now?
20-something.
For over 20 years.
At least 20-something years.
For more than 20 years?
At least.
So why now?
Well, because we've identified this control weakness. That's
20 years.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, unfortunately, the city has, for example, right, we have an audit every year, and every year there are comments in the management letter, and they'll point out, how they think systems are weak or whatever. And yeah, some of them have been going on for a long time, but that's not a reason not to fix them.
Did it come up in an audit? It's an audit finding? Can we have
I
that
have
audit
not,
finding?
I didn't say it did. I thought you did.
I kind of thought
No,
you did.
what I said was, we constantly get audits, right, where they point out that things are not optimal in their management letters, right? And they may have been going on for a while, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't fix them. That's all I said.
And how long have you been in this position doing this?
Which position? My actual current role? 5 years.
How long has he been in OMBs?
Almost 4.5.
30+ years.
Well, does
You've been
anyone
around
else
for
from
a
the
long
board
time.
have? I think you've heard from.
And just now, I'm totally opposed to it.
All right. David, how do you feel about it?
I'm absolutely.
It just, I understand where Ken is coming from, but it just doesn't seem like it's a necessary change. If anything, it seems like a completely unnecessary change.
I'm not sure why you feel it's unnecessary. I mean, we're responsible, right, for the public fisc, and we've identified a situation where a vendor is initializing the transaction to pay itself. Okay, and nobody wants to change that, our obligation to pay. No one wants to change the timing. The determination of the contribution is all controlled by statute. We're just saying, oh, this is really not the right way. An organization shouldn't set up a system where its vendor goes into its accounting and budget system and initiates a payment to itself. I don't know why this isn't something that you would fix.
So Ken, first of all, we're not a vendor, and we see it as a voucher. And second, the way that I look at it is the actuary makes the decision, it gets sent to TRS, we enter it, So we're comfortable what we've entered. We see what we've entered and we're comfortable with it. It goes then to OMB, and OMB can see we entered it correctly. So we're all happy that what's in there is what we think. If you do everything, then TRS has to rely on you saying you did it right. This way we all eyes are on it. So
All eyes would be on it exactly the same way.
That's most logical. At least it goes from the
Hold on.
actuary.
Wait. I got four of you talking once again.
All right, thank you. So again, I think our feeling is it should stay the way it is. From the actuary, it goes to TRS. From TRS, you certainly have eyes on it. Those are three different entities, sets of eyes, as opposed to just one entity taking care of all of it. We certainly understand what you're saying. I think you certainly understand what we're saying. Is there anyone?
I don't, I have to say, I'm not sure I do understand what you're saying. Is your concern that you'd like to send OMB a communication saying, here's the amount that we think should be paid. Let us know if there's a dispute before you put it in the system?
The way it's always been. I mean, you certainly.
The way it's always been is you put it in the system. And that's an inherent control weakness, number one. And number two, it's not like OMB has to look at it before it goes in. You put it in.
All these years?
Yes, after all these years, we've determined that this is not the right way to go forward. Right?
All right, Brian Berge.
I mean, it hasn't worked all these years. There was an error, right? So we know that.
I'm trying to help you out, man.
Well, then you're one friend in the room.
I understand.
Sorry, Brian, that's wrong.
You're asking for input from the board. I do feel honestly like I don't know that I agree with the framing of that question. It sounds like this is being presented as the participating employer's contribution function, the way that they transmit an already determined number. And I don't know that I think that the board has a role in policing how the participating employer goes about making its payment to the system. And I understand that there is an existing practice that involves the system, and I'm not trying to call that existing practice into question. But I do want, I think, to distinguish the role of the board administering board functions, this very important role, and the role of the participating employer to pay its obligations. And the way this is being presented, it sounds to me that it's about the participating employer's payment functions and mechanisms. And I am leery of having the board reach into the operations of the participating employer in that regard. And I appreciate entirely that other board members have different perspectives on this, and that there's a history that was unpleasant in the recent past, which I am not competent to reconstruct in all its particulars. But I think that that divide is an important one between us as a system and the participating employer discharging its obligations.
Thank you.
I don't think I could say it better myself. I would align myself with Mr. Berge in this case.
Okay. So anything that we don't take a vote on it, we don't.
Say no further action should be taken on this because the board just disagrees.
And I
That's what
think, and I do think some other boards disagree as well.
Don't anticipate any action being taken.
I mean, Ms. Hirsch, so we're certainly not taking a vote on it, but if we were, are you opposed to this method? Do you?
I mean, I've not brought this up with Brad. We've not had to have a vote on it at any of the boards, so I feel like.
Yeah, we're not taking a vote on it, but.
Vote, I do feel like this is a solution in search of a problem in general, is my personal opinion. So I don't really understand the purpose of it, but I don't know. I have not had to take action.
If I may, I would appreciate if there's not a clear will to vote on the subject, that we not vote on the subject, given that I may have a disagreement about the appropriateness of a vote. So,
We're certainly not taking a vote.
and that's all I have to say on this.
But as the chair, I'm asking that this not be the new process, and we'll certainly continue the conversation. I mean, we really don't. I think we've killed the conversation. So we would certainly appreciate it if the method would stop. Again, I think it's just, it's checks and balances. It doesn't make sense to take money out of one pocket and put it in the other pocket, and you are the only entity that is touching that money. So thank you for the presentation.
All right.
And I believe that, and I've spoken to the other board chairs, and I believe they feel the same way. But I do know you'll be doing a presentation for them, and
Already done that,
hopefully-
and you know, I'm getting the same sort of feedback, but I have to say that even the characterization, we take money out of one pocket and put it in another, and we're the only entity. No, we're not. The employer, that's the city, right, it's their money, and then they give it to TRS as a required contribution under the statute. And now the second party, TRS, receives the money. It's odd that the person who's getting the money is entering into the payers system. It makes, if you guys want to invoice us and we put it in, that certainly then that sounds like a routine thing. If it's necessary for you to write an invoice from the actuary's memo, that would make sense. But it's not. This is about right now, TRS on its own puts entries into the system, right?
We don't do it on our own. Ken, please, we don't do it on our own. That's a mischaracterization. There's disclosure from the actuary, the board's involved. That's a mischaracterization.
Oh, no, you do, but you make the entry. You make the entry on your own. Yes, TRS does the executive. The executive director, puts in motion a chain of events, has someone enter the system themselves. It's not about, the board. The board is part of TRS, right? The system is part of TRS. The actuary prepares the memo. So I get that you're not making up the number. I'm not suggesting, I don't think there's nothing here about the number. It's about who puts the entry into the FMS system, okay? And right now, you're talking about one entity versus two or three. Right now, we have one entity. The payee goes into the payer system and puts in the entry so that the money comes to them. That's not more control, certainly, than the employer puts the number in and makes sure the employee or the payer gets paid, that system gets paid. They're obligated to do so. If the system doesn't think they're paid the right amount, there are actions that the system can take. If the city, if we believe you paid the wrong amount, in theory, I mean, we had this with fire. Obviously, they cooperated and we got the money back. But the idea that the payer is not the entity making the entry into the system that generates the payment, it's just not an ordinary course of events.
So
And
Ken,
it's not a appropriate control, and it's not, it's really nothing to do with if you'll be paid, because you will be paid. You're paid because the statute requires it, not because you put the entry in FMS.
Okay, so we'll just have
Can I just say one thing?
Patricia Riley, and then I think we have enough on this
Right.
matter.
So Ken, you mentioned we can invoice you.
Mhm.
So we're gonna invoice you. We're gonna tell you what we think you should be entering. If you don't agree with what we're saying, because the actuary says something different, I don't expect that ever to happen, but it kind of happened last time. We said it was 7, actuary said something different. So we're saying you're gonna ignore us and you're gonna put the 6 in anyway.
No, that's not what we'll do.
All right, what would happen in that instance?
Okay, no, that's a great question. So what we do, we would ask the law department what we're legally obliged to.
All right, and the law department
We don't
really
feel
works
it's
for the mayor's
volitional.
office. So.
Okay, guys, really, you're not gonna get a record of this.
So Ken, all right, you're gonna go to the law department, and if the law department really looked and saw that the legislature said 7%, they would have to not agree with the actuary if they were doing it correctly, if you ask me. But having said that,
we would defer to whatever we would defer to what the law department said, because they're gonna tell
not
us.
what the legislature in Albany says?
I'm not capable of determining what the law requires, but what we're not gonna do is pay an amount that's not in concert with what our legal advice tells us is the statutory obligation.
All right, so when we're gonna give you the invoice and you're gonna go into FMS and you're gonna enter it, how are you going to communicate back to us that what we asked to go into FMS got put into FMS?
So, what?
I would like, because you kind of like kind of earlier
No,
on said,
I-
oh, maybe we'll send you an email, but I would like something more official than that.
Or you don't even, I wouldn't even see.
Well, okay, well, I mean, if you, I mean, I guess we could send you a letter, but that sounds kind of slow. I would generally think what we do is we'd send you an email saying, this is the amount it's been entered into FMS, and then you'd be able to see the entry, so you could verify that that was in fact what we put in. But if there's something else, you want a letter, I mean, I guess we could do that.
So I thank you for the presentation. I guess maybe what we're asking you to do is just to talk to the executive directors of the
Sure.
boards and see if you can come up with something that works. I mean, certainly the old process worked, but maybe you can come up with something that that would work and is mutually agreed upon.
That sounds like a good plan. All right, thank you very much
All
for
right, thank you,
giving me the
Ken.
opportunity to talk to you all. Thank you, bye-bye.
Okay, thank you. Patricia? Okay. We just have questions and comments.
Oh, yes, do we have any questions and comments from the public? Seeing none.
Okay, seeing none. Do I have a motion to go into executive session?
So moved.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any discussion? All those in favor of moving into executive session, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, thank you all for joining us. We're going into executive session and we will be back shortly. Okay, we are back into public session. Ms. Stang, would you please report out?
Certainly, in executive session, we voted to approve the renewal of an investment contract.
Thank you, Ms. Stang. Does anyone have anything else for this board? Seeing none, do I hear a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Mr. Kazansky. Do I hear a second? Second. Thank you, Ms. Hirsch. Any questions? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We stand adjourned. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.